So opium has been used in China since the 9th century. It has been accepted as a painkiller before the age of modern medicine. When addiction to opium became significantly serious, the imperial government made the consumption and sale illegal in 1729. The British East India Company bypassed this by selling opium to British merchants off the Chinese coast, avoiding Chinese jurisdictions. The opium trade brought a lot of corruption from Chinese merchants and the Canton customs that made even the emperor much wealthier. Now the Chinese purchased the opium with silver, which the British traded the silver back for tea and silk. Britain's merchants were restricted to only trade in Canton and no other Chinese ports, which made trade with China less profitable. By the mid-1830s, Beijing wanted to legalize the opium trade so imports can be controlled and corruption eliminated. The emperor demanded to eradicate opium instead. By 1839, Lin Zexu took charge of this. Opium dealers were to be executed if convicted. He confined the British community as hostages for 6 weeks until they surrendered the vast quantity of opium. The situation was fully exploited in Britain, from the immorality of the opium trade to the immorality of holding innocent British civilians as hostages. The British ordered a naval blockade of the Chinese coast. The opium trade moved to Hong Kong, where opium travelled up the coast, where the trade grew faster than ever. The emperor decided a war of annihilation before resorting to negotiations. With the fall of Canton and Xinjiang to the British, the war ended with the Treaty of Nanjing being signed. In page 42 of Rebellions and Revolutions, as it quoted, as a Canton merchant not connected with the drug trade wrote, the crisis might have started from opium, but the problems now was not to restore the legal trade without the most cringing and humiliating concessions. The Treaty of Nanjing, the treaty did not stop the opium trade at all, thereby unfairly compromising China's authority in controlling opium imports. The treaty was a humiliation of China's power and sovereignty on the world stage, and much embarrassment towards its emperor. The emperor underestimated the strength of his military and the British, which led to ultimate defeat. The Opium War brought an expansion of globalization and trade at the cost of surrendering its kingdom and control of its mainland. No longer having the balance of power, the film advocates China is a country exploited by foreign powers and its own authority in return for victimizing its people for wealth and greed. The British had the same ambition to get the resources they desperately needed, resulting into open conflict because the opium trade became too uncontrollable and the desire for tea became too overwhelming to give up. The real victims are the 4 million Chinese that have become customized to opium. Many civilians also lost their lives in the conflict. The Opium War The Opium War for the Chinese was to eradicate the continuing consumption of opium and protect Chinese sovereignty, which ultimately became the beginning of the end of the Qing dynasty. The British, on the other hand, wanted to expand trade across all of China's coasts, continue selling opium to China, and make China pay dearly, which they ultimately did.